Hey guys, Eric here, jumping on here. Today being June 30th, the last official day of Pride, but of course we all know Pride is 365 days a year and an extra day in leap years. But still honoring this with what I'm wearing today. So the reason I'm jumping on is because the news of the day all over the place. It's either about Tom Tillis, the senior senator from North Carolina, not running for re-election again after being threatened by primary by President Trump since he is voting against the big beautiful bill. And of course the other news is the rama is happening right now, where senators are able to add amendments to the bill and yada yada yada. So what I'm jumping on here about is an NBC News piece that is connected to a YouTube video from CNN that's talking about all of this, that has a synopsis of the winners and losers of this bill. And we'll just dive right in there. And of course, I will link the description, the article in the description, and I will also link the actual bill into the description. It is 940 pages currently. And I watched a video from Keith Boykin on YouTube, the Keith Boykin channel, who talked about the first 13 pages, which is just the table of contents. And then after that, it talks about SNAP and removing multiple people from SNAP, which is an acronym for Supplemental Nutrition something program. Hang on a second. Sorry, I thought I knew it. Assistance, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So the article I'm speaking of is here, done by NBC News about 2 hours ago. By Shannon Pettypiece, entitled Who Wins and Loses in Republicans' Big Beautiful Bill. Businesses and higher income households will be among the biggest beneficiaries from tax cuts that will be paid for in part with cuts to health insurance for lower income households. So first we start with, and of course here's the link for the bill, but I have it up right here. So I'm going to link this entire bill. In the description as well. The final vote, I believe, is scheduled for today in the Senate. And if it passes, even though right now we know of 2 Republican senators that are going to vote no. Senator Rand Paul, who says the bill doesn't go far enough with regard to cuts, and Senator Tom Tillis, who says the bill is going to hurt the working class. If they can only afford to lose one more senator. So based on some information I saw yesterday on YouTube about Alaskan Senator Susan Murkowski, based on what she got and having Alaska and Hawaii exempt from losing Medicaid, because the majority of people in Alaska do depend on Medicaid for their insurance, we believe that Susan Murkowski is going to vote yes, because she got an exception for her state and Hawaii. So we'll see how that holds. The other possible no vote could be the other female Republican that sometimes votes with Democrats, whose name escapes me right now. But they can only afford to lose 3, because right now they hold a majority, 53 to 47. If they lose 3, it'll still be 50. It'll be 50-50. And then J.D. Vance will break the tie and vote with the Republicans, and it will pass. They need at least 4. Which at this point, John Thune, who is the Senate leader, is not saying whether or not they have the votes or not. But anyway, let's dive into this. So, first winner, corporations. The legislature makes permanent trillions of dollars in corporate tax cuts enacted in 2017. Now, my housemate said, well, how is this going to raise the national debt? Because if they're cutting $1 trillion from Medicaid, how is this going to raise the national debt? Well, the continuation of the cuts does not equal $1 trillion. No, it is multiple trillion dollars. But anyway, the major crux of this was, and one of his campaign promises was to extend the corporate tax cuts enacted in 2017 during his first term, and expands other tax breaks for businesses. As a small business owner who actually just launched this year, I can tell you, when it talks about those tax breaks for businesses, they're not talking about small businesses like me. No, they're not. They're talking about corporations where I hold my money, my bank. Major companies like Meta, Google, Alphabet, Amazon, Walmart. I forget what year it was, but Amazon, and I work for Amazon as a packer, and then I led a returns department, and then I was in the HR department. Amazon 1 year, I think it might have been my last year, but it was somewhere around COVID, where Amazon was one of the few major companies that actually profited from COVID because everybody was ordering things online. Amazon, whatever year it was, and I'm sorry, I didn't do all of my research for this before I jumped on, I'm just doing this off the cuff. Billions of dollars in profits, but paid zero in corporate taxes. Zero in corporate taxes. And did any of that money come down to the employees? The way that Amazon divides them, particularly with me in operations, particularly with me in HR, which is the PXC tide of people experience and technology, operations is separate from PXT. And so PXT is bound by different rules, different pay scales, all of that. And it used to be if you were on the PXT side, you made more money than you did on the operations side. So, but that changed. And so operations benefited from that, but not PXT. There were people on my same level on the operations side, which were making more money than I was making per hour coming out the gate. And so that didn't sit well with me. But that's another story for another day. But that's how that works. That includes permanently lowering the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35% level before the 2017 tax cuts. The bill also extends or increases other tax breaks for business investments, like those on new machinery, equipment, and research and development, which business groups have said would encourage business investments in the United States. The bill also extends through 2033 tax incentives enacted in 2007 for businesses that invest in disadvantaged areas called opportunity zones. I don't know about you, but I remember 2017, and I remember those 4 years. And I lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and I worked in Kansas City, Kansas. I do not remember any business infrastructure being created in disadvantaged areas. So I guess it would depend on who is defining the disadvantaged areas. Loser, younger generations. The tax cuts, and this goes back to how I was explaining about how the national debt will go up, even though we are saving $1 trillion through the cuts. The tax cuts will add about $3 trillion over the next decade to the national debt. 3.3 is the estimate now, according to an analysis by the Congressional Budget Office. That means the U.S. will have to borrow more money to cover its expenses, requiring it to pay an estimated $600 billion to $700 billion in additional interest payments. Money that the federal government could be spending on other priorities or longer-term investments, according to an analysis by the Center for Responsible Federal Budget. What do you think that they could be spending that interest money on? The $600 to $700 billion in interest. Oh, I don't know. Maybe Medicare for all, so that every single person in this country could have insurance. And we wouldn't be talking about Medicaid. We wouldn't be talking about Medicare for seniors. We wouldn't be talking about 4 parts to Medicare, jumping through all of those hoops. And then if you are working in a corporation, you can have the choice between joining the national policy or staying with your company policy. It's not rocket science. They could be funding that. Or instead of getting rid of FEMA, because national disasters are going to continue to happen, reset FEMA and put experts in those positions to be able to help states with their national disasters. Or if you want states to take care of their own natural disasters, then help them. Western North Carolina is still estimating that it is going to take $60 billion, that's billion with a B, to get Western North Carolina back to how it was. So far, the state has coughed up, I believe this latest bill is about $700 million. Do you think the people of Western North Carolina could use some of that $700 billion worth of money? Of course they could. But Trump has said that he's not giving North Carolina any money. Governor Josh Stein has requested the money, and it was summarily dismissed and denied by the Trump administration, even though Trump was saying on Truth Social that Tom Tillis is doing a disservice to the people of North Carolina and that nothing was done about the natural disasters in North Carolina until he got in office. Bullshit. Bullshit. He didn't do shit for North Carolina when he got in office except go to the Western Mountains and review it. He didn't do shit except complain about FEMA and then announcing to his constituents, all the MAGA people who were there, and most of them didn't even live in the disaster areas, that FEMA was going away. So yes, I'm calling the president a liar. A liar. This money is going to go to interest when it could help businesses, infrastructure, and people to get their homes back. And honestly, in something that is probably a little morbid to say, to be able to bury their dead. But no, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about primarying somebody because they won't vote for his bill. Well, he doesn't have to worry about that now because Tom Tillis is not running for re-election. But I digress. And I apologize. But this bill, I'm one of the people that this bill is going to affect. Because I'm retired. I have a small business. But it's not doing well. And I can tell you, I just launched it this year. I don't have all the components in it. And it's going to take time. It takes time to get this up and running off the ground. I've got a lot of moving parts that I'm trying to work. So I didn't have any insurance. I tried to get the ACA, thinking that because Social Security was my only income, that I would be able to get a $0 premium plan through the Affordable Care Act. They said that my Social Security benefits wasn't enough for me to qualify. And so they referred me to my state's Medicaid plan. And I was automatically enrolled which is how I found out through a doctor's appointment that I was type 2 diabetic. And I've been on a plan since then, and so on and so on. And this bill, if it passes, I will be one of the 11.8 million people to lose that insurance. Yes, I was able to get on Medicaid due to the expansion program that was put in place by Barack Obama to expand Medicaid. Governor Roy Cooper then signed it to expand the rolls in North Carolina, and then I was able to get insurance. But now I'm under threat that I may lose my insurance. So on the one hand, I have to hurry up and make sure that I can get as much information as I can to do all this, because the insulin that I'm on, I pay $4 for it right now. Off Medicaid, we're talking hundreds of dollars that my Social Security money will not pay for. And so I will have to look for other means, or get to a point where I honestly don't have to worry about the insulin, because one group of people over here say, well, Eric, it can be reversed, but it's going to take a minute. Another group of people over here saying, well, now that you're diagnosed, you are diabetic for the rest of your life. Well, I don't care what anybody says. Living a healthy life costs money. It does. It does. Nobody can convince me any differently. It costs money. But I digress. So let's go back. Money that the federal government could be spending on other priorities and longer-term investments, according to an analysis by the Center for Responsible Budget. Federal budget. The amount of money Americans pay toward interest on the country's debt is expected to increase sharply in the coming years, totaling $78 trillion over the next 30 years and accounting for 34% of federal revenues. Over one third of federal revenues will come from the increase in that debt. $78 trillion. Higher debt could also drive up interest rates for both public and private borrowers. It'll cost you more to get a mortgage, where people are already priced out of buying houses already. More people will be priced out of buying homes, because higher debt levels can raise concerns among investors about the U.S. government's ability to ultimately pay its debt. And I will go back to another phrase that is still thrown around today. It's called trickle-down economics. Trickle-down economics has never helped anyone. Next winner, higher income households. The bill would greatly expand the amount of state and local taxes households are able to deduct from their federal taxes, from the current cap of $10,000 up to $40,000. The biggest beneficiaries from the change would be households making between $200,000 and $500,000 a year. I personally, in my personal life, in my circles, I don't know anybody who makes that kind of money. I don't. One of my friends makes about $150,000 a year. He's been in the same job. He's in his 50s. He's been in the same job since he was 20-something years old. He's the only person that does what he does for the company. And he makes that kind of money, but I don't know anybody else that does. But even still, that is not in this range. So what percentage of Americans are going to be able to take advantage of those tax cuts? It is not the middle class, and it is not the working poor. It's not. It would also disproportionately benefit households in higher tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California. Wealthy households and business owners will also benefit from a permanent reduction in the estate tax. Under the legislation, heirs of estates valued at less than $15 million will not have to pay a tax on their inheritance. That cap is set to drop to $7 million in 2026. Loser, lower income households. Provisions in the latest version of the bill would cause nearly 12 million low-income individuals to lose their health insurance over the next decade by cutting around $1 trillion from Medicaid, the health insurance program for poor and disabled people, according to the CBO. The Senate bill includes steeper cuts to Medicaid that an earlier version passed by the House. Yes. And as Elizabeth Warren said during an interview over the weekend, during the debate of this bill, the Senate is actually going after Medicare. So when you add all of that up together, it is over $1 trillion that is being removed from healthcare. And as that article said, nearly 12 million people will lose their health insurance. I would say that constitutes living in a hostile living situation. Just like the Trump administration creating hostile work environments, that you can't make a decision without threat of losing your job. The cuts would take a particular toll on Americans in rural areas who are more likely to receive health insurance through Medicaid than those in urban or suburban areas. Researchers at Georgetown University found that 40% of children in small and rural towns receive their health insurance from Medicaid. The bill could also reduce the number of people who receive their insurance through the Affordable Care Act. The version of the Senate bill released over the weekend also includes cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps, by requiring adults without a disability between the ages of 18 to 64 to work at least 80 hours a month unless they are caring for a child under the age of 10. The added requirements could lead to $300 billion in cuts to food stamp spending. Workers with income from tips and overtime, they're listed as a winner. The legislation would carry on through on a campaign promise President Trump to exempt income tips from overtime, from tips and overtime from federal income taxes. Tipped workers make up about 2.5% of the workforce, and about 12% of hourly workers clock some overtime each year. Both tax exemptions are structured as deductions that workers would claim when they file their taxes at the end of the following year. The tax exemption would apply only to the federal income tax, so workers would still have to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes on their income, along with any state and local taxes. So to say workers with income from tips and overtime, no taxes on tips and overtime, not entirely true. It is only federal taxes that will be exempt. And they actually won't be exempt when you get your W-2. Then when you file for your taxes, then you have to take that amount and put it in your form as an exemption in order for that amount to be subtracted from your adjusted gross income. But I am not. Please consult a tax attorney or a tax professional, a licensed tax professional, as I am not a licensed tax attorney and I am not a licensed tax professional. Among tipped workers, as many as 40% already don't make enough money to have to pay federal tax on any of their earnings, so the benefit would be relatively limited. The loser, healthcare workers. Less funding for Medicaid and fewer people with health insurance would mean a drop-off in doctor's office visits, prescription refills, and medical procedures. And as a result, fewer workers needed to support these types of services. That could lead to the loss of nearly 500,000 healthcare jobs over the next decade. So if you divide that by 10, we're talking about a loss of 50,000 jobs in the healthcare industry every year for the next 10 years, according to an analysis by George Washington University and the Commonwealth Fund. The Senate legislation seeks to mitigate some of that pain for rural healthcare providers who care for a disproportionately high number of Medicaid patients with a $25 billion fund for rural hospitals. The winner, fossil fuel companies. Both the House and the Senate bill include wins for the fossil fuel industry, stripping away numerous provisions put in place during President Joe Biden's administration to shift energy consumption away from fossil fuels. Both bills would delay a fee on excess methane pollution by oil and gas companies, roll back Biden-era rules to curb vehicle emissions, and include provisions intended to speed the development of the new fossil fuel projects. The Senate bill also includes a new tax workaround for oil drillers that would enable many of them to avoid having to pay a corporate alternative minimum tax of 15%. The loser, clean energy companies and workers. Clean energy companies say the bill could cripple their businesses by stripping away tax subsidies and funding made available during the Biden administration. The Senate would go further than the earlier version passed by the House by imposing new tax penalties on wind and solar farm projects started after 2027 unless they meet certain requirements. Those requirements were announced over the weekend, saying that they would have to, in order to be exempt from this, they will have to prove that none of their products include any iota of Chinese minerals. Yes. They will have to prove, in order to be exempt from those taxes, that their products do not include any Chinese products or Chinese minerals. And we all know those precious minerals are needed for the very basic chips that are in our phones, in our computers. So just marinate on that. That could jeopardize billions of dollars in investments in clean energy projects, along with the thousands of jobs that would come along with those projects, including Republican-led states like Georgia and South Carolina. Other provisions would reduce benefits for consumers buying electric vehicles, solar panels, and appliances to make their homes more efficient. And of course, if you deregulate all this stuff, that means you're just going to have to breathe all this in because the air is going to get worse. That's the whole reason of stopping fossil fuels. Because number one, they're going to run out at some point, and we need cleaner energy sources so that the United States is not dependent on other places for their energy. And so that is the synopsis for this video. My apologies for the emotion that I was exuding, as though that I'm surprised about all this. I'm not. I'm just angry. He said he was going to do this. The Congress, they know that they have the ability to say no, yet they're not going to. And we'll just call a spade a spade. This is yet again propping up the millionaires and billionaires. It is putting the foot on the necks of the middle class and the working poor of this country, who are going to suffer because of the consequences of elections. I didn't vote for this crap, but other people did, and they won. And now we are all suffering for it, including most of those people who voted for it. Where egg prices didn't come down, gas prices didn't come down, at least not down to where they said they were going to come down. And so I end this video like I do with all my videos now. Elections have consequences. North Carolina has an opportunity now. If there is any political deity, please convince Roy Cooper to jump into the Senate race in North Carolina to assure that Senate seat becomes blue, and that Roy Cooper goes to Washington as North Carolina Senator in 2026. And then, of course, in 2028, your time is up, Senator Budd. Senator Budd, your time is up. Thank you for viewing. Like I said, I'm going to link all this stuff in the description. Share this. People need to know. People need to know. And then you can read it for yourself, particularly the actual bill itself. Read it for yourself. And I'll say it one final time in the month of June. Happy Pride. Happy Pride. And I'll see you on the next one.